This is. Hold on. Are we live? Testing. 1, 2. All right. This is KXPR Midnight Broadcast, your overnight companion for those who can't sleep, won't sleep, or forgot how. It's just me tonight. Bill was supposed to be running the board, but he left a message saying something about a migraine. So you're stuck with me, your voice in the dark. Weather's calm. It's the kind of night that makes radio feel like a lifeline. The quiet hum between songs. The warmth of knowing someone's out there listening. If you're up, call in. Tell me why you can't sleep. We've got hours to fill, and I'm here, with you. Let's check the weather, and after that, maybe some jazz, unless you've got requests. All right, let's take a look at the overnight forecast. Nothing too wild. Temperatures holding steady in the low 60s. A bit of patchy fog drifting inland, but no storms, no weird pressure systems, just the usual slow unraveling of another night. If you're on the highway, I hope you've got a clear sky above you. They're calling for good visibility all the way through sunrise. Hold on. What? Okay. A caller's already on the line. That was fast. Let me just... You're on the air with KXPR Midnight. Sorry, what did you say? A second son? Sorry, that's not... Can you repeat that? Okay, look, I don't know if this is a prank or just someone who's been up too long, but... Hold on, there's another call coming in. I just stepped outside the booth. There's no way to explain this. It's up there. High, bright, wrong. Right next to our sun. Only it's not daylight yet, so why... How? It's smaller, but not by much. And the color, it's not gold, not white, but something in between. Like the glow off hot metal. More calls are coming in. I see the board lighting up. Every line is full. I need to know, where are you seeing it? Is this just here or is it everywhere? If you can hear me, if you're seeing what I'm seeing, call. Tell me what it looks like from where you are. I swear, I just saw it move. I know that sounds insane, but the light, it flickered just once, like an eye blinking. This is KXPR. Stay on the line. We need to figure out what the hell is happening to our sky. All right, we're back. Every single line is lit up. I'm going to take you one by one. No screening, no filters, just tell me what you see. Caller 1, go ahead. You saw it split? What do you mean? You're saying it wasn't there and then it just peeled away from the first sun? Like something crawling out from behind it? Okay, stay on the line if you can. I'm taking another call. Caller 2, you're live on KXPR Midnight. A pilot, you're saying you had to land? Your instruments failed? What do you mean you saw a shadow inside the light? I can't... Wait. Caller 3, you're up. A mother, watching with her kids from the porch. You swear the light is pouring into the house? Like it's alive? Okay. All right, keep calling. I don't care how insane it sounds. We need to figure this out. Together. All right, I'm back. I'm trying to get some answers. I've got every contact in my phone, working in astronomy, meteorology, even emergency services, and I'm patching them in one by one. First up, Doctor. Calhoun, astrophysicist out of Berkeley. Doc, what the hell are we looking at? A solar reflection? A rogue celestial body? Some kind of unknown atmospheric phenomenon? All right, that's not reassuring. Next, Dr. Imani from the National Weather Center. You're telling me it's a mirage caused by upper atmosphere ice crystals? Then why are people hearing things when they look at it? I need something solid here. If this is natural, if this can be explained, tell me now. Because the phones haven't stopped, and the stories, they're getting worse. Okay, one more. Dr. Kim, NASA Research Division. You're saying the satellites didn't detect anything entering our system? Then where the hell did it come from? No one knows. Not one expert can give me a single consistent answer. This is not normal. This is not in the books. If you're listening out there, keep your eyes on the sky. But maybe don't stare too long. I've been staring at it too long myself. It just flickered. Not like a power grid failing, not like cloud cover moving in. This was different. It was deliberate. It wasn't a glitch, it was a blink, like an eye adjusting to focus. You ever had someone stare at you through a window, and even though they never say a word, you feel them watching? That's what this is. It's not just light, it's presence. Every instinct in me is telling me to look away, to shut the blinds, to cut the feed, but I can't. Because if I'm right, if this thing is seeing us the way we're seeing it, then we've already made contact. And we didn't say hello. Wait, hold on. Do you hear that? No, not in the booth. In the air itself, there's a low frequency hum. It's shaking the glass in the windows. I'm not imagining this. It's everywhere. If you've got a radio nearby, turn the volume down low and listen underneath my voice. It's there. It's like something big just moved above us. Too big for us to see. But the air felt it. My signal's getting unstable. Static creeping into the feed even though everything's patched and working fine. I'm going to stay on air as long as I can. But if we get cut off, stay with me. Even if my voice drops out, stay with me. Because something just shifted, and I don't think it's done yet. The second sun is still there. It hasn't moved, hasn't dimmed, but something about it feels closer, like it knows we're watching. I opened the phone lines 3 minutes ago. They're already full, every line. I can barely keep up. Some of you are crying. Some of you are screaming at me to do something, like I have any control over what's happening in the sky. One caller, voice shaking, said the light isn't just above anymore. It's pouring into their house through the windows. Not like sunlight, but like something alive, pressing against the glass. Another swears they heard a low voice vibrating under the hum. I'm going to take these calls live, unfiltered. If you're out there, if you can hear me, tell me what you see. Maybe if we piece it together, we'll understand it. Or at least, we won't be alone when the sky decides what happens next. Hold tight. I'm patching through the first call now. You're live on KXPR. Go ahead. He says he's a long-haul driver, pulled off near mile marker 217, somewhere north of town. He's been watching the sky since it started. He's trying to explain it, but the words aren't coming easy. He says the second sun didn't just appear. It peeled off the first one, like a blister rising from the skin of reality itself. He saw it tear free, dragging light behind it like a root being ripped from the earth. He thought it was his windshield at first, some double reflection from condensation or heat shimmer. But then his CB radio crackled, and other drivers started describing the same thing. He says when it separated, the world tilted, not physically, but some part of his mind shifted, like reality took a step sideways. He can still see it through his side mirror, hovering like a second eye, staring down the highway. I ask if he's seen anything else, any movement, any shapes inside the light. He goes quiet for a second, then says, I think it's looking for something. The line cuts out before I can ask what. Next caller, line 2. You're live? The voice that comes through is clipped, rattling. Someone speaking too fast, trying to get everything out before the line drops. He's a pilot. Regional flights, nothing international. His plane was mid-descent when the second sun flared, and every instrument went dark at once. No altimeter, no GPS. Even the comms went silent. Just dead air filled with soft static. He switched to manual, trying to guide the plane down, using nothing but his eyes and instinct. But the horizon wasn't where it was supposed to be. He says the ground kept sliding sideways, as though space itself couldn't decide which way was down. And then he saw something inside the light. He swears it wasn't just a sun, that there was something moving in the core, a shape too sharp and too slow, like a hand pressing against glass from the other side. He says he's safe now, landed at a small municipal strip. But his co-pilot hasn't said a word since touchdown. Just sits there, staring at the sky like he's waiting for something to step through. The line crackles out. I take a breath, trying to steady my voice, and I ask, what the hell are we supposed to do if the sky itself wants to come inside? Line 3. Your love on KXPR. The voice on the other end is soft, trembling. It's a mother calling from her front porch, 2 states away. She's holding her phone in one hand, her youngest child's hand in the other. She says they've been watching the second sun for nearly an hour now. At first, it was just light. Blinding, but still. But now, she swears something is moving inside it. She tries to explain, but the words keep catching in her throat. It's like shadows inside glass, she says, flickering shapes that stretch and pull, like fingers pushing against a thin wall. She tells me her kids can see them too. They keep asking her why the sky is trying to come in the house. I ask if she's sure. Maybe reflections, optical tricks. She interrupts me. She says the shadows know they're being watched. Every time they blink or turn away, the shadows press closer. She moved her children inside, closed the blinds, shut off every light. But it didn't help. The second sun's glow bled through the walls, leaving pale outlines on the floor. She's whispering now, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid the light might hear her. She says it feels like the sun is listening, like it's learning the shape of her family through the cracks in the curtains. And then the call cuts off, mid-breath. I barely have time to react before the board flickers. The whole station hums a low, bone-deep vibration that shakes the speakers and warps the feed. Then the power dips, just for a second, but enough to make every system stutter. Lights dim, the signal chokes on static, and the phone lines surge like they're about to fry. Somewhere outside, I hear jets, a full formation, tearing across the sky. Low and fast. No explanation, no flight advisory. They're flying, like they're trying to intercept something, but there's nothing to intercept. Only that light, hanging heavy and wrong above us. I try to pull up emergency reports, civil defense, air traffic control, anything. But every official source goes dark. Either they're overwhelmed or someone's pulling the plug. Whatever's happening up there, they don't want us knowing. And whatever those jets are chasing, it's not on any radar we can see. I'm about to cut to a break just to catch my breath when every speaker blasts to life at once. The emergency broadcast system takes over. No warning, no preamble, just that shrill tone, the one no one ever wants to hear outside of a test. Then the message starts. But something's wrong. It's 2 voices speaking at the same time. One is the familiar, flat official voice, the kind that reads off evacuation orders during hurricanes. But layered underneath, like a whisper bleeding through old tape, is something else. The second voice doesn't match. It's slower, stretched, almost like it's learning to speak human language as it goes. And it's not reading the same message. I lean closer, trying to make out the words beneath the words. The official voice tells us to stay indoors, that an atmospheric anomaly is under investigation, that power interruptions are temporary, that there is no immediate threat to public safety. But the second voice, the one buried underneath, says something else entirely. It says, they see you. They know you're listening. Then the feed dies, cut off as suddenly as it started. No official sign-off, no explanation, just silence. And for the first time in my life, silence feels like the loudest sound I've ever heard. The mind fractures, psychological fallout. I need answers, and fast. The emergency broadcast cut out minutes ago, and the phone lines are still jammed with callers who don't know if they're awake or dreaming. So I called someone I trust, Dr. Julian Holden, psychiatrist and trauma expert. He's on the line now. Doctor, I need you to explain this. People are seeing things inside the light. They're hearing voices that aren't there, Whole families are saying the sun is watching them. Is this mass hysteria? Dr. Holden sounds calm, but his breathing is too fast. He says this is beyond hysteria. What we're witnessing is a rupture in shared reality itself. When enough people experience something so unnatural, the brain can't process it. It bends. And when reality bends, the mind bends with it. I ask him if this could all be a collective delusion, some psychological domino effect triggered by fear. His voice drops low. He says that's what worries him most. A delusion spreads like a virus, but only after someone imagines it first. What happens when the delusion starts before anyone can even explain it? He says the second sun isn't just changing the sky. It's rewiring how we see the world and how the world sees us. Then the line goes dead. Before I can call him back, a flood of texts and voicemails crash into the station server, all saying the same thing. People are losing time. A man in Seattle woke up standing in his backyard with no memory of how he got there. A woman in Kansas swears she went to bed at midnight and opened her eyes to the sun already high, even though her clock said 2 a.m. And then there's Sam, a trucker who's been calling all night. He left a rest stop 15 minutes ago, or so he thought. His dash cam says it's been 5 hours. His GPS shows he's 100 miles farther down the highway than he remembers driving. Some of them talk about missing whole days, just erased. Others say they watched themselves move from across the room, like they were passengers in their own skin. Every one of them mentions the same detail, no matter where they are. When they finally snap back to themselves, they're always facing the second sun, and the second sun is always brighter than they remember. I don't know if this is a cosmic event or something crawling into our perception itself, but if time can slip, if our own lives can fall out of sequence, what happens if we lose too much of ourselves to get back? The phones won't stop. And the dreams. My God, the dreams. Different states, different time zones. Callers from the East Coast, the Midwest, the South. They're all describing the same dream. It starts in a city they don't recognize, a city that doesn't exist. The buildings are wrong, too tall or too thin. Their edges blurred like they're still being remembered into existence. The streets shine like wet glass, even though no rain ever falls. And in that city, the light walks. The second sun isn't in the sky in this dream. It's on the ground, a shape made of liquid fire stretching human limbs as if it's trying to learn how to move like we do. They all see it. They all describe it the same way, down to the sound its footsteps make. Like radio static played in reverse. They all wake up the same way too, gasping, staring at their windows, waiting to see if the second sun followed them back. It gets worse. A man from Pittsburgh says his wife woke him up during the dream, except when he opened his eyes, her mouth was moving. But no sound came out. And outside, the second sun was closer than ever, hanging just above their street like it had been listening in. If we're all dreaming the same dream, if the second sun can follow us into sleep, what happens if we wake up somewhere we can't come back from? The dreams, the lost time, the voices under the light. None of it stayed contained. It's bigger now. It's spreading past the airwaves. I'm getting reports from towns across the state, across the whole country. People are gathering, not to protest, not to demand answers, but to worship. They're calling themselves the children of the second dawn. Their belief is simple. The second sun didn't come to hurt us. It came to lead us somewhere beyond this world. They're convinced it's not just light. It's a message wrapped in fire, some kind of celestial invitation. They're walking into the fields at sunrise, standing with arms open, faces lifted, waiting for the light to take them. But that's only half of it. Another group, the Veil Keepers, believe the exact opposite. To them, the The second sun is a predator, not a guide. They believe the first sun never had a twin, that this thing in the sky is an intruder, a shape that slipped through from the wrong side of the veil. They're not standing in fields. They're boarding up windows, smashing mirrors, and chanting ancient prayers nobody remembers learning. Both sides are convinced they're right. Both sides are terrified of the other, and somewhere between them are people like me. Too scared to worship, too tired to fight, just stuck staring at the sky, wondering if the second sun is staring back. And if it's watching, what is it waiting for? It's just me in the booth, or it was. Bill, my producer, hasn't said much tonight. He's been keeping the calls flowing, patching in experts, cutting dead air. I thought maybe he was just rattled like the rest of us until I heard him whispering. At first, I thought it was nothing. Maybe reading notes to himself, maybe praying. But the whispering didn't stop. It's the same phrase over and over, low and steady like a chant running just under his breath. The sun can hear us. I asked him what he meant. He just shook his head and kept whispering. I muted the feed to confront him, but the whispering didn't even pause, like it wasn't something he was doing. It was something happening to him. He looked at me like I should already know, like I should have known the moment the second sun appeared. The sun can hear us. Every word we say, every thought we think near a window, every time we stare too long into that impossible light. It's not just seeing us. It's listening. And if it's listening, that means it's learning. What happens when it knows enough? I've just received an official government statement, and I'm going to read it exactly as it came in. No edits, no commentary, just their words. The atmospheric anomaly observed across multiple regions is a natural reflection caused by an unusual combination of upper-level ice crystals and solar refraction. There is no threat to public safety. Residents are encouraged to remain calm and go about their daily routines. That's it. That's all they gave me. They're calling this a reflection that casts shadows that move inside the light, a reflection that whispers to people in their own homes, a reflection that splits time apart, like cheap fabric. They want calm, but what I'm hearing in the voices flooding this station is anything but calm. I'm supposed to tell you to relax, to believe the sky is just playing tricks on us, to trust the people who didn't see it happen in real time like we did. I'm sorry, I can't do that, because I saw it split. I saw it blink. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend a reflection knows how to watch us back. I'll keep reading their updates if they send them. But if you want the truth, it's not coming from their press office. It's coming from you, the ones who can't sleep because the sky won't look away. Right after I read that statement, someone sent me a file. No name, no return address, just a blank email with a link. I opened it. It's satellite data, and it doesn't match a single thing the government just claimed. The file shows 72 hours of space surveillance feed, the same feed weather agencies use to track storms. For the first 71 hours, there's nothing but clear sky, and then, frame by frame, the second sun pops into existence. No gradual approach, no orbital drift, just there, fully formed. That's not a reflection. That's not even how stars work. The document attached to the file lists anomalous energy spikes. Spikes so strong they knocked out multiple military satellites before the second sun appeared. There's a note scribbled at the bottom of the file, handwritten, like someone wanted to make sure it couldn't be digitally erased. It says, "This wasn't supposed to happen yet." What does that mean? Yet. Did someone know? Did someone expect this? Whoever sent this, if you're listening, send more. I'll read every word live. If the sky broke open on schedule, we need to know what time the next crack appears. I was about to open the lines again, to hear what you've seen, what you've heard. maybe even to hear from the person who sent that file, but I can't because the phones are dead, all of them. At first, I thought the system crashed from overload, but no, this is different. It's not just this station. My backup cell is down too. Then the fax machine, yes, we still have one, spits out a single sheet. No letterhead, no signature, just one line. All non-essential broadcasts must cease immediately. That's all it says. But if they think this broadcast is non-essential, they're wrong. Because the official line is broken. The experts don't agree. The sky doesn't match the science. And I'm not turning off this mic just because someone somewhere thinks silence is safer. If you're out there, if you can still hear me, there's one thing I need you to do. Keep watching the sky, even if it watches back. After the phones died, I started digging. Someone out there still wants this broadcast silenced, but they also made a mistake. They left the station's old wire service terminal online. It's slower than everything else, but it's still pulling feeds. And what I found, sitting in the system's cache, is worse than anything I've read tonight. It's a partial list of missing persons, scientists, researchers, university faculty. Every single one of them specialized in astrophysics, radio astronomy, or upper atmosphere phenomena, and every single one of them had, at some point, publicly questioned the reflection theory. They gave interviews, published papers, even posted skeptical threads online. Most of them were dismissed as alarmists, or worse, conspiracy theorists. But they weren't wrong. And now, they're gone. Vanished in the last 48 hours. Families can't reach them. Offices abandoned. Labs scrubbed clean. And the strangest part, their personal research notes, the ones they left behind, all contain the same phrase. Repeated in margins, scrawled in notebooks, even carved into desktops. 2 sons, 1 real, 1 watching. This isn't just a cover-up. It's something deeper. It's like the second sun isn't just in the sky. It's in the science itself. Twisting facts the way it's twisting time and memory. What happens when the people who understand the sky disappear, and the only voices left are the ones who refuse to look up? Yeah. I don't know where those scientists are now, but I know this. If they knew enough to disappear, then they knew enough to be afraid. I left my personal phone off all night. I didn't want to be distracted while keeping this broadcast alive, but I just turned it on. And now I wish I hadn't. There's a string of texts, all from a number with no origin, not a real contact, not even a spoofed area code, just a blank header, like the message came straight from the static itself. Every text says the same thing. They are lying. Don't trust the sky. Don't trust the sun. Some of them are time-stamped hours ago. Some of them have no timestamp at all, like they arrived from nowhere. One of the texts says my name. Not my on-air name, my real name. And the last one? It says something even worse. The sky knows you can see it. That's not a warning. That's a confirmation. I'm trying to stay calm, but it's getting harder. A low hum just started, different from the static hum in the sky, sharper, mechanical. I followed the sound, and there it is, a drone, military grade, hovering just outside the station tower. Its camera, if that's what it is, locked directly on me. It's not broadcasting anything, not sending a warning, not relaying emergency updates. It's just watching. I don't know if it's here to shut me down, or if it's here to see what I see. Maybe both. But the second sun is still there, still burning, still flickering like an eye struggling to focus. And now there's another eye, a mechanical one, watching me watch it. Who's really running that drone? The government? Or something that learned how to use their equipment? Either way, it's too late to stop now. If you can still hear me, keep listening. Because if they wanted us blind, they wouldn't be watching us back. I've opened the lines again. But this time, not just for callers. I'm bringing in the experts, if any of them still have the nerve to go on record. First up, Dr. Alvarez, astrophysicist, decades of research published in every journal that matters. I ask her what the hell we're looking at. She says it's a rogue star, some wandering celestial body that got caught in our gravitational well. It happens in deep space, she says, but not like this. Not so close, not without warning. Then Dr. Sharma chimes in. He says the rogue star theory is nonsense. According to him, the second sun is a breach, a rupture where space-time folded inward, creating a mirror image of our own sun. A cosmic hallucination made real. But Dr. Kim disagrees. He says this isn't a reflection, a rogue star, or a breach. According to him, the second sun is an object sent here deliberately, placed exactly where it needed to be, not by accident, by intent. They argue, science versus science, theory versus theory, each one more desperate than the last to force the unexplainable into a framework they understand. And while they argue, the second sun just hangs there, unbothered by their explanations, flickering like it's laughing at all of us. I ask one final question. What happens if they're all wrong? None of them have an answer. The next guest is Dr. William Gregson, radio astronomer, one of the smartest voices in the field. He's calm at first, clear and methodical, explaining how every telescope on the planet missed this. He says it's not possible. Something that large, that bright, should have been visible years ago. Except it wasn't. I ask him to speculate. If science can't explain it, what's left? That's when his voice starts to shake. He says the second sun isn't a sun at all. It's a signal, not light. Language encoded into the sky itself. I ask him to explain, but his voice slips into numbers, sequences, equations. Some I recognize, some I don't. He starts repeating them faster and faster like he's trying to say a prayer in the only language the sky understands. Then, mid-sentence, he screams, a short, sharp burst of static and terror, then silence. I call his name. No answer. Just breathing, ragged, shallow breathing, like someone who's seen the shape of the thing behind the sky and couldn't look away fast enough. Before the line cuts out completely, he whispers something under his breath. It sees me too. Then nothing. The scientists are falling apart. Logic can't hold the weight anymore. And into that vacuum steps faith. Religious leaders are calling in now, priests, pastors, self-proclaimed prophets, all convinced the second sun is a message from God. Reverend Keller says it's the second dawn foretold in Revelation, the day the sky itself divides to usher in the final judgment. He says every shadow inside the light is a soul already taken, a warning to those who refuse to repent, but not everyone agrees. Rabbi Weiss says the second sun isn't a warning, it's a covenant renewal, a sign that the divine has returned to walk among us, shining down two lights to guide two paths, salvation or surrender. And then there's Sister Magdalene. She's calling from a monastery turned quarantine zone, where her sisters have taken a vow of silence to avoid attracting the second son's attention. She says the light isn't divine at all. It's a test, a predator mimicking the face of God, hoping we bow before it so it can see how we break. They all speak with conviction, with certainty, but none of them agree. And through it all, the second sun just watches, its light falling equally on the believers, the doubters, and those too afraid to choose a side. The experts are gone, the scientists are collapsing under the weight of their own silence, but the calls keep coming. Not explanations, just confessions. More and more of you are saying the same thing. It's not the brightness that scares you anymore. It's the sound. Some of you hear whispers pouring out of the second sun, voices drifting through the static hum that's been in the air since this started. Some say the voices are soothing, soft and sweet, like someone you love, calling you back inside after a long day. They whisper familiar names, names they shouldn't know. Your childhood dog, the friend you haven't seen in years, the grandmother who taught you how to pray. Others say the voices are speaking in languages no one can place, tongues that scrape the edges of your mind, like you should understand them, but you can't, because they're not meant for human mouths. A woman from Arizona swears she heard her own voice calling back to her from the sky, same tone, same breath, but the words were wrong, twisted just enough to sound like a version of herself that never left the dream she had as a child. Another caller said he heard a voice reading from a book that doesn't exist, listing the names of people who haven't died yet, but will soon. And still, the second sun burns above us, silently screaming or gently singing, depending on what kind of fear you carry inside. I want to say it's imagination, shared trauma playing tricks on the brain, but the patterns match. The cadence, the strange pauses, the sense that the voices aren't coming from the sun itself, but from something standing just behind it, using the light to push the words through. If the second sun is talking to us, we have to ask, who taught it how? And if it's mimicking us, what exactly has it been listening to? I've been on air for hours now, and I can feel the shift, not just in what people are seeing, but in what they're believing. Belief systems that took lifetimes to build are breaking overnight. Whole communities are abandoning science, not because they don't want to understand, but because understanding doesn't want them anymore. They're turning to signs and omens, reaching back to old prayers whispered by grandparents who believed the sky itself was alive. Some people are burying mirrors, convinced the second sun can't see them if they erase their reflection. Others are carving symbols into their doors, wards against a light they no longer trust. In a town outside Louisville, they're lighting bonfires every night at dusk, not to worship, not to pray, but to remind the first sun it's still wanted here. And yet others are embracing the second sun fully, gathering in empty fields, lifting their hands toward the light, waiting for whatever comes next. Faith used to live inside churches and temples. Now it lives in shadows, under the second sun. I'm not here to tell you what to believe, but when belief becomes the only thing standing between you and madness, the line between superstition and survival disappears. The phones are still open. Somehow, even after the blackout orders, the calls still find their way in. The last call I take before the hour flips comes from a priest. Voice shaking, breath uneven. He's calling from inside his church, candles burning at every window, every crucifix turned upside down. He doesn't offer comfort. He doesn't offer prayer. He only offers this. The second son is not alone. He says it 3 times, like a warning, like a curse. He says something else is coming, something that needed the second son to appear first, like a beacon or an opening act. Then the line cuts to static, but not before he says one last thing. What comes next doesn't need light to see us. The priest's final words are still rattling in my head. The second son is not alone. I barely have time to process that before my monitor flickers. At first, I think it's just another signal dropout. The whole station's been running on fumes since the grid started flickering. But this is different. It's a military frequency bleeding directly into my console. Not an emergency broadcast, not an evacuation order. Just a label in bold, unblinking text. I didn't request this feed. I shouldn't even be able to access it. This is classified beyond clearance levels I didn't know existed. There's no voice, no explanation, just raw data flooding the screen, bursts of technical reports, faded transcripts, internal memos, all referencing something called Twin Dawn. The signal's dirty, corrupted, like it's been looping in a forgotten server, waiting for someone to stumble across it. Maybe the second sun itself pulled it back into the light. I don't know who sent this or why, but I do know this. This isn't the first time humanity has seen 2 suns, and this wasn't supposed to happen again. I'm scrolling through the files. Fragments of a story no one was ever meant to read in full. Project Twin Dawn wasn't some research program studying natural phenomena. It was an experiment, a deliberate attempt to engineer a second sun. Back in the Cold War, both sides, ours and theirs, were terrified of the same thing: total blackout. They believed the first strike in a nuclear war wouldn't just target cities, it would target the sky itself, knocking out satellites, wiping out navigation, leaving the world blind. So someone came up with a plan. What if we could build a backup sun, a fail-safe light source, artificially stabilized, hanging in the sky no matter what? The first test failed. The second one failed worse. By the third attempt, something looked back through the breach they created, and the entire project was buried under 1,000 layers of classification. The scientists weren't silenced because they were wrong. They were silenced because they were too close to the truth. The second sun didn't appear out of nowhere. It was called back. And whoever opened that door before, they didn't just lose control. They lost something else, something none of these files can explain. Something that's still watching us now. Buried at the bottom of the data dump is something worse than physics. Worse than politics. It's prophecy. The documents aren't just technical reports. They reference ancient texts, pulled from every corner of human history, fragments of forgotten scriptures, pre-human carvings, and broadcast anomalies that were detected centuries before radio even existed. Each one mentions the same omen, two suns, and the dying sky. In every version, the story's the same. A second sun appears, not as a blessing, not as a reflection, but as a warning that the sky itself is sick. When two suns rise over the same world, it means the sky is no longer ours. The prophecies don't agree on what happens next. Some say it's a herald for something coming through, a force too vast for the human mind to hold. Others say the second sun is the sky's final defense, a light so bright it's meant to burn out what doesn't belong. But the worst prophecy, the one repeated across every culture, every language, even before these civilizations knew each other existed, says this: two suns will shine before the first goes dark forever. That's not poetry. That's a countdown. And if the first sun dies, what's left to stand between us and the dark? The official story says it's a reflection. The scientists said it might be a rogue star, a breach, a mistake in space-time itself. But that's not what you're telling me. The conspiracy calls are coming in nonstop now. Voices from underground forums, encrypted chat rooms, places that have been waiting for something like this. They say the second sun isn't a sun at all. It's a doorway, a rip in the thin skin between worlds. They say it was never supposed to be a light. It was supposed to stay invisible, a passage only things on the other side could see. But someone or something forced it open too wide, and now the light is spilling through, like blood from a wound that won't close. One caller claims this exact phenomenon has been predicted for decades, buried inside declassified remote viewing experiments, where psychics described a wound in the sky that would pulse like a heartbeat until something stepped through. Another swears the second sun isn't just watching, it's measuring. The way a predator watches a wounded animal, not because it's hungry yet, but because it needs to know how much fight is left before it moves in. These callers aren't asking for answers. They think they already know. They're asking how much time we have left before the thing that built the doorway finally walks through it. And they all agree on one point. The second sun isn't sending light into our world. It's pulling light out. I'm trying to take these calls, trying to let you speak, but something's wrong with the line. Every caller's voice is starting to blur together, not just overlapping, but syncing. Word for word, breath for breath, different people from different places, speaking with the exact same timing, the exact same pitch. At first, it's just noise, like a crowded room collapsing into a single echo. But then the words become clear. We see you. They all say it together, not in fear, not as a threat, just stating a fact like they've known it all along. Like the second sun itself taught them how to say it. Line after line, caller after caller, they all speak with one voice, until I can't tell where one ends and the next begins. We see you. We see you. We see you. The second sun isn't just light, it's perception. It's a mirror held up to the entire world. And now it doesn't matter if you're watching it or not. It's watching you. I can't explain this, but the whole booth is humming. The same frequency that's been leaking from the second sun all night. It's here now, inside the broadcast itself. The lights flicker, the console vibrates under my hands, and the signal tries to choke itself out. But I'm staying on the air. Because as the second sun pulses above us, the timing matches something. It matches my own heartbeat. Every pulse, every flicker, every vibration. It's not random. It's reading me, scanning me, syncing with me in real time. This isn't just a broadcast anymore, it's a conversation. But I'm not sure who's hosting who. I don't know how long I've been talking. Hours, days. Time doesn't sit right anymore. Not since the second sun rose. I just stepped away from the mic to check on Bill, my producer. I expected him to be right where he always is, half asleep in his chair, drinking bad coffee, muttering at the call screen. But the chair is empty. The back offices? Empty. The hallway? Empty. No sound, no footsteps, just silence thick enough to choke on. I check my phone. No new messages from Bill. No emergency notices. No anything. It's like the station forgot it had people in it. But the signal's still live. The static hum is still breathing through the walls. The second sun is still watching through every window, flickering just enough to remind me it's there. I'm alone, in this booth. Except, I'm not. Because you're still out there, right? Someone's still listening. Even if you're the last one, even if your house is empty too, I need you to stay. I need someone on the other side of this signal to prove I'm still real. I'm not asking for much. Just stay. Keep listening. That's the only thing keeping me from slipping into the quiet with everyone else. Because if I stop talking, if you stop listening, I'm afraid the second sun might think we've finally given up. I'm still here, but the signal's not holding together anymore. The static is back. Not the gentle hum from before, but something thicker, heavier, like it's trying to press through the speakers themselves. It's not random either. There's a rhythm to it, a pulse that's perfectly in sync with the second sun. It flickers, the static surges. It dims, the static pulls back. I've heard feedback loops before, but this isn't feedback. This feels like language, but built out of noise instead of words. Like the sun is trying to speak through the transmission itself, using the station as its mouthpiece. It shouldn't be possible, but I can feel it breathing inside the frequency, learning the shape of my voice, testing how much signal it can steal before I notice. If you're still hearing me through the noise, hold on. If you can still make out my words through the crackling, hold on. Because I think the second sun wants to say something, and it's using my broadcast to do it. The static just broke for a second, but it wasn't silence that came next. It was voices. Familiar ones. Callers from earlier tonight, their words playing back like ghosts caught in the wires. It's not me triggering those files. I didn't touch the board. The station itself is deciding what you hear now, and it's choosing goodbyes. The first voice is a man from Tucson. He called in right after the second sun appeared. I remember him saying his dog wouldn't stop barking at the sky. His message ends with a prayer. The next voice is the trucker, the one who saw the second sun split off from the first. His message ends with a whisper. If you're still driving toward the light, turn around. After that, a mother's voice, trembling but calm, telling her children to stay away from the windows. She says they're singing lullabies to drown out the hum. And then, the worst one. It's Bill, my producer. His voice crackles through the speakers recorded hours ago. But I never knew he left a message. He says, If you're hearing this, it means the station kept broadcasting after we were gone. Don't stop talking. As long as someone's speaking, the second son won't know if we're still here or not. Don't stop talking. Don't stop talking. Don't stop. The message cuts off. So I'm still talking. Because the only thing standing between us and whatever comes next is the sound of my voice. The static is pulsing in my ears and the station feels colder than it should. But none of that matters because the second sun just changed. It's not just light anymore. It's opening. That's the only word that fits. A slit running down the middle. Wider, wider. Until it's not a sun at all, but an eye. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. An eye larger than cities, looking down without blinking. There's no iris, no pupil, just layers of something that isn't quite flesh, isn't quite fire, folding and unfolding in a rhythm that almost matches my breathing. Almost. For hours I've been asking if it could see us. Now I know. This isn't a distant star. It's a lens. And we've been framed inside it this entire time. Watched like insects under glass. The calls have stopped. Maybe the sight of it silenced everyone at once. Or maybe the second son doesn't need the phones anymore. It's learned everything it needs to know just from watching. The eye is focused now. No flickering, no uncertainty. It knows exactly where to look. And right now, it's looking at me. If you're still listening, if anyone's left to hear this, I need you to understand. The second son isn't visiting us. It's studying us. And whatever it came to learn, it's almost done. What happens after that? I don't know. But the moment it closes its eye, I have a feeling we won't be here to see what happens next. I should end the broadcast. I should shut this all down, go find Bill, drive until the second sun disappears behind the horizon. But I can't, because a file just popped up on my screen. Unlabeled, no sender. It forced its way into the system, overriding everything else. When I opened it, I knew exactly what it was, the final record of Project Twin Dawn. I'm going to read it to you now, because if I don't, no one will. Project Twin Dawn began not as a defense program, but as a contact experiment. We believed the universe was waiting for us to open a window, and that if we sent out a light bright enough, something would answer. They wanted a conversation with the unknown, so they built a second sun, not to illuminate, but to signal. The experiment worked. Contact was established. The second sun responded, but it was not what we expected. That's where the file turns. The language becomes erratic. Sentences cut off. Words repeat. It's like the document itself was infected by whatever they contacted. It watches, it listens, it learns. And once it learns enough, it becomes the mirror. They weren't just seeing the second sun. The second sun was seeing through them, reflecting humanity back at itself, studying every weakness, every fear, every unanswered question. Then the final entry. Do not speak to the second sun. Do not describe it. Do not name it aloud. Every word we say becomes something it understands, and once it understands enough, it will know exactly how to finish what it started. I've been talking all night, describing, explaining, naming. I've given it everything it needs, and now the second son knows exactly how to end the story. There's more in the file. I can see it. Lines and lines of corrupted text, pieces of something they tried to bury. I'm going to read as much as I can before I don't know if you can still hear me. The feed just hiccuped hard, like the whole signal jumped sideways for a second. But I'm still talking, and if I'm still talking, that means, all right, this isn't me. This isn't the equipment. This feels like someone or something is cutting me out in real time, like they're editing this broadcast before you even hear it. I'm going to keep going. If they're listening, if they're watching, they already know everything I'm about to say, but you need to know too. The file says the second son can only hold the doorway open for so long before. So if we stop talking, if the signal dies, the light can't close it once it's fully open. That's why Bill knew. That's why he said, don't stop talking. And now it's too late. Because the second son isn't just watching anymore. It's speaking back. And whatever it's about to say, for 30 full seconds, the airwaves are nothing but static. Thick, distorted, alive. Then from somewhere deep inside it, so faint it's almost missed, a whisper breaks through. It's not the host. It's not Bill. It's not any voice you'd recognize. The whisper speaks slowly, carefully, like it's choosing each word with surgical precision. It says, "This message is not for you." The static surges, pulling the whisper under for a moment before it rises again. Louder this time, clear enough that everyone listening hears it at once. This message is for them. Them. Not us. Not humanity. Them. Whatever was on the other side of that doorway. Whatever learned to speak through our machines, through our voices, through the second son itself. It was never talking to us. We were just the relay, the mouthpiece, the temporary host, the real audience, the ones this was always meant for. They were already listening long before we knew to be afraid. The whisper fades, the static softens, and then there's only silence. A silence so complete, so final. It feels like the whole sky just took a breath and held it. And somewhere above us, the second sun begins to close its eye. Maybe you heard all that, and you think it's just a story, just static and fear wrapped in a voice coming through your speaker. But if you're still listening, if you made it all the way to the end, you already know this was never really about the second son. It was about the silence that comes after. The silence that waits to see if you'll remember. Because the truth isn't hiding in the light. It's hiding in everything you've forgotten. The dream you lost when you woke up too fast. The name you almost said but couldn't place. The moment you looked at the sky and felt watched but didn't know why. So here's the question, the one you can answer right now before the silence comes for you too. What's the very first thing you remember seeing when you opened your eyes this morning? Go ahead, leave it in the comments. And if you can't remember, ask yourself why. If this broadcast made you feel a little less alone tonight, subscribe, because there's always another story, another voice trapped inside the static, waiting to be heard. And before you go, share this with someone you care about. Someone whose voice you don't want to forget, because memories disappear faster than light. And sometimes the only way to keep them alive is to make sure someone else remembers too. This was VoiceCast, signing off for now.